Welcome to this episode of the Athletics Office Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Weaver, with Coach RC with me today. And parents, what we want to answer today is, why are kids pressured into specializing early in a particular sport? Coaches, how do you help your athletes to navigate the need or want to specialize early? So let's first of all define what we mean by that. So at a young age, a parent sees that their kid is enjoying one sport, loves practicing that particular sport, playing that particular sport, and so they specialize early. They forget about the other sports and they want to go full on into that one sport and specialize. So, Coach RC, as you've walked through this with your kids who are elementary age going into middle school, as you've worked with parents over the years of athletes that are in your sport, why do they want to specialize? Why do they feel that pressure to do so?
Well, I think a lot of parents, and me in particular, I have a different opinion on this, but a lot of parents see the end goal, right? Like, my son's going to be the next LeBron James. Like, you know what I mean? So, like, they have that perspective going into it. They see their kid have a little success early, and then they're like, hey, no, we're going to really hone in on this, and we're going to get really good at an early age, be the best 8-year-old or 10-year-old on the field, and then hopefully that carries over into high school and into college, get a college scholarship. Then the next thing you know, you're going to go play in the NBA or Major League Baseball or whatever, So that's what I see mainly. And even from a young age with my daughter who was playing softball, like the amount of time that some of these little girls would put in softball at 9 years old and 10 years old and not play anything else the rest of the year. Like, they're playing almost 70, 80 softball games during the summer and then going into this. And, like, that's what my niece plays, and she's in high school. You know what I mean? So, like, you're seeing these 9 and 10-year-olds play this, and then by the time they get to high school, they're like, I'm done. I'm tired. I don't even like this anymore, But from the parent perspective, I think that's what parents are looking at is, hey, how can I get my kid to the next level, right? Instead of being patient and kind of letting them develop and things like that. Like, that's my plan, is to let my kid develop a little bit.
Yeah, well, it's funny because that's one of the things that's changed. Like, I can't remember my parents really pushing me to play sports or anything. I mean, and I feel like sports seasons were more clearly defined when we were growing up. It was like, hey, in the fall, we're going to play this fall sport. In the winter, we're going to play the winter sport. Like, I only played basketball in the winter, and then I went to occasional summer tournaments, 3-on-3 or 5-on-5 tournaments in the summer, but I really didn't play in the fall and the spring, anything organized. Now, we went to the park, we played in our driveway and in the backyard, things like that. But that's another thing is I feel like parents have inserted themselves more into, I got to get my kids signed up for this and that. And to be honest, those are conversations we've had in our house. Okay, it's fall. What sports do y'all want to play? Like, you have to play a sport. Okay, so now we're signing up for everything. Okay, hey, winter's coming up. What do you want to play? Whereas I feel like when I was growing up, I really didn't even play anything until 4th grade.
Yeah,
I don't think I played any organized. I may have played like 3rd grade football, but 4th grade I feel like is when I kind of started. I mean, heck, I feel the pressure as a kindergartner and as a first grader, getting my kids involved in sports and things like that. Not even talking about specialization, just in sports in general. Yeah. And a lot of times it's, parents are starting to ask, hey, what's your kid in? Let's get them on the same team. And those are conversations that are happening, I feel like, way more now than before.
Yeah. Sure.
So let's talk about the pros of it first. All right. Let's start off with the positives. So, what have you seen or what have you heard from parents and kids who have decided to specialize early on what they've gotten out of it?
In baseball in particular, a lot of kids that start to specialize earlier, you see their skill set a little bit, progressed by the time they get to high school. So, like, we're getting them when they're in high school, for the most part. Like, we get to see them in middle school a little bit. But as they're growing up, like, when I'm seeing kids in high school, like, you're seeing that, okay, this kid started playing baseball when he was 7, right? He's still playing baseball. He plays during the spring. He plays in the summer. Like, he's getting a lot of time. He's going to private lessons. He's going to this pitching guy. He's going to the hitting. So you see those things happen. You can do a lot more faster and earlier when those guys have a base skill set that's already clearly defined, right? Um, I see it like with basketball per se, with our fifth graders. You know, they're gonna have a kind of clear defined skill set of like, hey, this is how I play defense. I hope.
Yeah.
I hope.
The coaching is holding them back. Let's just say that.
So like, this is how I play defense, ball handling, just different things like that. So when they have that base, I think that's a huge pro as they move up and mature in their sport. Then on the other side of the pros too, like you have, can a kid move, right?
Yeah.
So a kid being able to steal first base and second base, like you can train that. You can train to get better at that. And you see kids starting to specialize in like lifting and doing speed training and agility stuff early too for their sport right then and there. So I think that those are all pros to kind of specialization in sport.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say, very similar. And, if you get to our school, particularly,
Yeah.
and I'm sure a lot of schools across the nation, and start playing in 7th grade, you are behind. And so let's clearly kind of separate, being involved in youth sports versus specializing in youth sports, right? I mean, so a lot of my kids are playing a different fall sport, a different winter sport, a different spring sport, a different, some things in the summer. We might take a season off, things like that. But, versus training year round for one sport. But the pros of that is, you get farther ahead quicker, right? So, you might be a 4th grader, and if you're just now starting to participate in sports, or you haven't specialized, So we coach our daughter's 5th grade basketball team, but we don't play year round.
No.
And so the teams that play year round, they beat us pretty good, right? They beat us pretty good. But we'll talk about that. But they do get farther, faster, quicker in that. The other thing is they develop a community within that one sport, I would say another thing. And it looks different in each sport. But like, for instance, baseball, if you're playing year round, if you're, going to camps with your buddies and those type of things, you're developing your own community. So that could be another pro of that. But I think the main thing is you get better, quicker, and develop a lot faster, okay? But the question is, what does that look like when you become 17 and 18-year-old, when you get to college and things like that? So let's jump into, what could be the cons of specializing early. Let me jump in. You're taking a drink, so let me jump in. So we actually looked up our own research here, and so I got into this article by the American Orthopedic Society for Sports Medicine and kind of their findings through their research. And the 3 things that they pointed out as cons is overall motor development. So if you specialize in one particular sport, are you developing as a full athlete? If you specialize in basketball or baseball or volleyball or tennis or golf, are you developing all parts of you as an athlete?
Yeah.
And again, going back to when we were younger, we would just play all these different sports, and they weren't even always organized, right? I mean, you might just meet in the sand lot and play baseball. You might just meet in a field and, play 2-on-2 soccer, 3-on-3 soccer. I mean, you do these things that are unorganized. And so the overall motor development and just allowing you to develop as a, can I move laterally? Can I sprint? Can I change direction? Can I jump? Can I backpedal? Can I do all of these different things? Because certain sports ask more of, those few things than others. The other thing that they point out is increased risk of overuse injury. Now, again, I didn't do the research in this. I've seen it both ways. I mean, if a kid plays multiple sports, they can get hurt, right? Now, I think it's different when you get hurt playing multiple sports versus specializing in one sport because, particularly in baseball, I'd imagine throwing, that's something you do over and over and over. They push you, we got to have pitch counts. You got to really watch those things. But, you get them as a high school kid and they've got all these elbow issues. They got all these shoulder issues because they were used too much in youth. And so overuse injuries can be a big thing. And then the last one is burnout and early retirement. And I think this is the one that sticks with me the most because we see them as a junior and senior. I mean, I had a very talented player come through our program a few years ago, and he got to his junior year and was like, Coach, I am so tired of basketball right now. And I was like, man, this is where we need you. You know, we need you to be a leader for us going into your junior and your senior year. And he had just played so much basketball over the years. Now, that was one of the reasons why he was good, but there, you know, we got to talk about a way to calibrate that and manage that in the best interest of the athlete. And we'll get to that here in a second. But I see them as juniors and seniors, and that's the time you need to be able to put in a lot of time for your sport.
Yeah.
And if you're burned out, you're not in the mental state to be able to do that. You're not in an emotional state to be able to do that to where that's what your team needs. So I've seen kids that develop real quick to go back to the pros real quick. They're incredible as 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th graders. And then there's a kid that didn't specialize early, that's played multiple sports and everything. As time goes on, they stay motivated in that sport and they pass the one that specialized. I'm not saying that for a kid to specialize, it's bad for everybody.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think I can make that general statement. You know, there are some kids that, you know, that wanted to be in the gym all the time and they stayed consistent in that. They managed themselves well enough to be able to stay motivated and things like that. But that is very, very rare, I would say. That is not the recipe for success. And again, it looks different for sports because one of the things that this journal article pointed out is sport like gymnastics. You know, you better get involved in that pretty early. I'm sure if you were to talk to different coaches, it looks different in each sport, right? Like maybe some sports you can start a little bit later. I think one of the things it said is team sports, football, lacrosse. There was one more. You can get started later.
Yeah.
Some individual sports, it helps to get started earlier. But again, do you have to specialize early? You know, if you're going to be a golfer, maybe you need to start training a little bit earlier. Tennis player, maybe some of those more individual sports like that.
I think it's all about that introduction to the sport. You know, at that age, like you're thinking like, hey, let me introduce my kid to this sport. I think don't take this the wrong way, parents, when I say this, but I think parents right now in this day and age, we push our kids to do that. To like, hey, oh, you can hit a ball. We're going to put you in this thing all day long, and we're not going to let you try anything else because we can see like, oh, you're going to be really good at it.
Yeah.
That's not the case. Like, I feel like my kid is going to come to me and be like, hey, like if I introduce them to, like say my son, I introduced him to golf. He likes to go to golf. I'm not pushing him to go to golf every week.
Mm-hmm.
He goes one day a week, and that is the most fun that he has.
Yeah.
He can't hit the ball straight to save his life, but he enjoys going to golf.
That's the main thing.
And that's the main thing. And I think right now, like we have one end of the spectrum that's like, hey, I don't want to introduce my kid to this sport too early, or I don't want to introduce my kid to this sport because it's toxic, right? And then you have the other end that's like, hey, I'm going to introduce my kid to this sport because at the end of the day, if I get him in it early enough, he's going to be able to help provide or do these things. Yeah. Now, everybody's situation's different, right? You hear those stories of like, hey, I helped my mom back in the day. Like, this is why I'm doing it, to help my mom. And, you know, all those stories. And those are great, you know, but not every situation is like that. So I think introduction to the sport, I think is what, as a parent, is what the focus should be on. Like, try to introduce your kid to as many sports as possible. Yeah. You know, and then your kid will in turn tell you, like, my daughter straight up told me, she's like, I don't like playing softball no more. And it hurt my heart. Yeah. But like, it hurt my heart.
You sure?
But
she
was like, I don't like playing it right now.
Yeah.
And that could have been me putting the pressure on her of like, hey, no, you got to catch the ball like this. You got to do this. You got to do this. Right? Who knows? Like, in a year, she may be like, you know what? I'm ready to play again. You know? So, like, I think it has to do with letting your kid be introduced to sports and then them kind of guiding, hey, I want to do this.
Because at the end of the day, it's for them, right? It's shouldn't be for the parent. And I think that to take that a step farther, it's so you may have introduced your kid to a sport and then you saw that they were good at it. Maybe they loved it. And you're like, hey, let's do this. I'm going to sign them up for this. I'm going to do this, you start inserting yourself in there more. Most of the parents I talk to are like, look, they're the ones that want to do it. I don't really push them. And again, only they know, right?
Yeah.
Only we as parents know. But I think the other thing that we have to think about as parents is, are we trying to live this life through our kid, right? And that's a struggle. I mean, even for us who have coached a long time, it's like, you beam with pride when your kid has some success out there and does a really good job and things like that. But again, at the end of the day, I want my kids to enjoy sports. It's like, what is the purpose of sports? To have fun, to go through adversity and successes, and to learn more about yourself. For us at OCS, I mean, we're believers, we're a Christian background. We want to teach these kids how to glorify God through the gifts that he's given us. And, so I can't insert myself in there and make it about me as a coach or me as a parent. And I think every year, or every season, you have to ask, is my kid still doing this because they love it or because I'm pushing them to do it?
Right.
Because that'll change, right? Maybe at the beginning you do introduce them to a sport, but then after a while you're like, well, we've kind of chosen that we're going to do basketball.
Yeah.
So therefore, like, you're going to do basketball. And like, I've fallen victim to that. My kids have wanted to try some different sports and sometimes said, no, we're not going to do that one. Yes, we're going to do this one. And, really got to be open to allowing them to try different things to see what they like. And at the end of, some of these kids are not going to go play college.
Yeah.
And so to push them that way for that end goal is not the healthiest. It's like, if it winds up working out, great, but that shouldn't necessarily be the goal. And we'll talk about more of that. So anything else on cons that you've seen or do you have any stories about, kids when you've seen them as juniors and seniors and where they get to emotionally and mentally to be able to participate in your sport?
Yeah. So the overuse of injuries, like stress fractures, tendonitis, different things like that. That's something that when I was doing research over this topic, that was something that continually came up, right? Burnout, right? Another thing, overtraining syndrome, right? They defined it as like, say a baseball player, he's hitting all the time. So he gets to the point where it's like overtraining, he's swinging so much to where he doesn't know when his swing's not right, or he doesn't know when it, like, at an early age,
Yeah.
And then reducing long-term participation. When I was at another school, in a public school here in Edmond, like, we had a really talented pitcher who was just like, Coach, I'm not going to play this year. All right? He's a junior. Like, he's going to be one of our district arms.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm not going to play this year. I'm just done. Like, I'm tired. I don't want to come to practice anymore. Like, when I come to practice, I don't even want to be here, So, like, as a coach, you're like, all right, I got to do something to make him want to stay, right? And as I was younger, I'm like, yeah, we got to do something to keep him around. We got to win. Like,
Right.
You know what I mean? The main thing wasn't the main thing then, So, like, seeing that and having that conversation with him, it's like, hey, why don't you want to play anymore? He's like, Coach, I've been playing since I was like 4. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, it's just tiring. I don't even know what I'm going to do at the end of the day. Excuse me. I don't know if I'm going to go to college for this. Now, long story short, he ends up still playing, ends up going to Princeton. Very smart kid, plays baseball at Princeton, but he didn't even want to play.
Yeah.
And that was one of those things of, he's been playing at a high level for so long. It's just like, the participation in the sport is no longer fun for them. It's more like a job.
Yeah.
Right. And one thing that I try to emphasize to our high school athletes is like, this is not your job. Your job right now is to be a student first, like a great kid, love your parents, enjoy the sport, give your best effort, and then keep going from there. I said, once you get to college, now it becomes more of like a job.
Right.
Because guess what? If you're on scholarship, they're paying you to participate in this sport.
Right.
And you better give effort, or else there's a lot of coaches in college that, like,
Take it.
That's their livelihood.
Yeah. Take that scholarship.
See ya.
Yeah.
And you're back at square one. You're like, what do I do now?
Yeah.
And then along the lines of identity, right? Even at OCS, I had a player that is like, Coach, I'm a baseball player. And I'm like, what do you mean you're a baseball player? Like, that's what everybody knows me as, is a baseball player. I'm like, that's not who you are.
Yeah.
You know, you were such and such, a child of God. You know what I mean? So like being able to have that conversation on the spiritual end, like my identity is not in the sport. And I think right now we have students and players, and this is everywhere, right? That they get wrapped up in like, this is me, you know? Because in the atmosphere that they're in, their school setting, they're like, oh yeah, good job. You put up 35 points last night. Like, you're him, you know, like, you know, and that's what they see. That's the persona.
Yeah.
And I think that's a fine line that we have to, you know, it's okay to give a kid a little bit of credit, you know, but at the end of the day, he's got to understand you are not this guy. Like, you're not a basketball player. You are your name, child, you know, all this. Sorry, that's a whole nother thing that we can go on.
That leads us into kind of our next session about what are the other costs of sports specialization, because that may be the biggest, is just this identity factor.
Yeah.
And, you know, the scary part about that is now you've got a kid who's riding the wave of success and failure.
Right.
So, you know, they may have a lot of success early. And if as a parent, you're like, man, you threw a great game. You scored 20 points. You did this. And that's what you're feeding into them. Like, then that's what they connect as their identity. Well, my mom and my dad, they like me, they love me when this happens. And maybe they're frustrated with me when I don't do those things well.
Right.
And now my identity is tied to that. So you're just riding this wave of, you know, let's say you get to be 8th grader and you're injured, you're out all year, right? I think that, again, coming at this from a completely spiritual side, that God uses those moments to, you know, like I've had ACL injuries. I've had, you know, different times where I've had to sit out and have surgery and things like that. And it was almost like, am I making this an idol? Am I making this sports an idol where I'm giving my focus and my time and my effort only to this, and to not having a relationship with God, not having a relationship with my parents outside of this sport? And so it's a really good test to test like what is really important to me, because I've seen kids get depressed. You're out 2 months and all of a sudden they're depressed because their identity is completely attached to their performance on the field and everything. And I think that's something that as adults, leading kids through this time of, you know, they're already emotional and there's all these different things going on. They don't know how to think through life things yet. It's really important that we can help them navigate that. And so, you know, one of the advice that we give, like in our parent meetings, is when your kid gets in the car, just tell them, I enjoyed playing out there, or I enjoyed you being a part of the team. Maybe they don't play a whole lot. I enjoy that you know, I love that you work hard, you know, or just whatever. Tie it to those things, the effort part of it, rather than, you know, can't believe you struck out and, you know, not swinging, you know, get that bat off your shoulder, right? Or I can't believe you missed that free throw, or just performance-based comments. They can be just very hurtful in that. So, you know, making it an idol and fighting that identity is a huge deal. Some other costs, financial costs. You know, you talked about scholarship. I was talking to one of our basketball parents, and they had told me in the past that they had spent $22,000 one year for their kid to play AAU basketball. And he's like, I didn't even realize that. And we sat down with our tax guy and was going over everything. And he's like, yeah, $22,000. And I mean, you think about that, it's like, if one of the reasons you're doing this is to get an athletic scholarship, you are losing money in the end, right? I mean, now, if you're doing it for the enjoyment of it and for them to develop and grow and those type of things, like that's great. There's some good reasons to obviously play different sports and participate outside of schools and things like that. But if that's your main factor, like that is a losing investment, because one, it may not pay off, but even if it does, you know, a lot of sports only give partial scholarships, right? You still have to pay. For the ones who do give full scholarships, you know, you're still, the money's not break even. I mean, you're still kind of losing money on that deal, but there's a financial cost. And like, you know, you've got multiple kids, I've got 5 kids, you know, trying to do your family budget while also paying for, the trainings and the sports and those type of things, and the emotional and time demands that are on you. So I've got an 8th grader right now. He's playing basketball games on Mondays and Thursdays. Okay. When our youth league starts, we'll be playing on Saturdays for my 3rd and 5th grade daughter. I've got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old coming up. When they enter the picture, what does that look like? I mean, it's like, how many times are we having dinner at home as a family and connecting? Or, some families, you might only have 1 or 2 athletes out of 4 kids. And so then maybe a couple of your kids are feeling like their whole schedule is based upon who the athletes are in the family. And so that's something, man, you really have to manage well. You really have to be purposeful and intentional about what are the times that we are getting together as a family. And then what are we sacrificing, right? I mean, one of the things that we talk about is, anymore, if you're playing a basketball tournament, a lot of times this is for AAU, it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So you're missing church, right? Baseball, if you're playing, you're missing church.
Thursday through Sunday.
Yeah. I mean, it's, and you start thinking, well, like you may say, okay, well, we have to do that because that's when the tournament is. Okay, well, then what are you doing intentionally on the other side to be able to, lead your family well, to be able to, in this case, go to church, get this strong spiritual foundation. Like I've heard from dads in the past that, they'll do devotionals on Sunday mornings before the tournament starts, and they'll, kind of have their own little community Bible study and things like that with the players, and those things are incredible. But that's, there's a financial cost there, there's an emotional and time demand, and then there's the identity issue that I think are other costs that you have to take into consideration.
Yeah, I mean, I remember going through a time when I was in high school, I was injured, right? It was my senior year. My parents don't even know about this. So like when my mom watches this, she's one of our frequent viewers. But when she,
thank you for that.
When she watches it, it's going to be eye-opening for her. Like, my parents are very spiritual. My dad is a pastor. He was a pastor for 30 plus years. Like my mom worked at the church with them, served, so like I have that spiritual background. But when I was a senior in high school, I fractured my hand and I was out for an amount of time. I went through some stuff during that time. Did I tell my parents? No. Like, they didn't know I was going through that. But I went through some tough times because that's what I was. I was baseball. Like, I started playing baseball early. And going back to the leaving time and space to be able to continue to grow spiritually and have that time, my parents had a strict rule about me playing on Sundays. Like, they already knew that, my coaches already knew, they weren't bringing me to that game.
Yeah.
So if they wanted me to play on Sunday, somebody was coming to that church to pick me up. And it was usually after a service that I had already attended.
Yeah.
Right?
And you still played college baseball.
And I still played college baseball. So like there was some strict like boundaries that my parents set for that. But on the flip side, once I got to high school, like I didn't know how to handle that myself. Right? And my parents were great. Like they continued to pour into me and things like that, not knowing what was going on.
Yeah.
But like thinking about that and understanding, like you said, having the leaving space and leaving time for your family and your spiritual growth still, right? I think that's where parents start to struggle too. And then there's this myth versus reality of like, hey, is specialization in sport and necessary for you to be in college, right?
Yeah.
I did some research on this, like 45% of Division I college athletes in this trial didn't specialize in a sport until after age 16, right? And then only 17% specialized before the age of 12, right? So now, like, you're looking at it and you're like, all right, is it necessary for me to start specializing right now, right? Is it a myth for me to do this? Like, are all these college coaches talking out of both sides of their mouth right now saying like, oh, you don't need to specialize, but really you do? Like, there's data that says you don't have to, right?
Yeah.
Almost half of the players that are playing Division I college sports didn't start specializing until age 16, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy. And, Nick Saban has this video of him talking about how he used to recruit track guys to play cornerback, right? And then he says, like, they had terrible ball skills. So he's like, for me, I'm a football coach, but I want to go get a baseball player. They've been tracking down baseballs their whole life. So I'm going to go find a guy that plays football and plays baseball, right? Multi-sport athletes that are versatile, that can move in different ways and things like that. So I think those are other issues that, kind of got to be talked about too.
Yeah, and it reminds me of a video I saw Bob Stoops once, and he was talking about the receivers that he recruits, and he said, if you can't start on your high school basketball team, why would I recruit you for receiver at the University of Oklahoma? You have to be a good enough athlete to be able to go start on your high school basketball team. I mean, I saw this picture a few weeks ago of I think it was Drake May, who was quarterback at University of North Carolina, now in the NFL, and he was at a basketball game, and there was a college basketball coach and a college football coach there recruiting him, and for both sports. And so when you're that level of athlete, you can go and not just participate, but dominate a lot of times. I mean, if you're a Division I athlete at our school, you could go and you could play football, you could play basketball, you could play baseball, you could run track, you could do all these things at such a high level.
Yeah.
So, you kind of got into this last question here is, does it increase the chance of success? And again, I like most answers to questions, big questions, it depends, right? In basketball, as a basketball coach, I don't think you have to specialize in basketball at an early age. Now, do you need to play basketball at an early age? Yes, but I think you also need to play multiple sports. Does it help in football to specialize? I don't think so. I don't think you need to. You can answer baseball better than I can, but just my 2 cents. I think it helps to play baseball early. I don't know if you necessarily need to specialize, and I definitely think it. Think about a baseball player maybe plays in the summer and maybe one of their seasons, spring or fall. If one of the seasons they took off and played another sport and they weren't throwing at least in that time, how much that would save them. But again, golf, tennis, gymnastics. Wrestling, we're going to talk to youth wrestling coaches. Again, it helps to play, but I think in most circumstances, it hurts if you don't play multiple sports at a young age. I think you should start at a young age, but playing multiple sports is the important thing. So what are your thoughts on, does it increase chance of success?
Specialization no, I don't think it increases chances of success, right? Not until you hit a certain age, right? And usually that age is high school-ish for me, my perspective. When I'm looking at baseball players, like, you don't learn how to be tough until you've played another sport that is kind of like wrestling or football or a contact sport per se, right? I think wrestling is one of the harder sports to play. It's versus somebody else, and like, you guys are just straight going at each other for like, I love watching UFC.
Yeah.
Right. There is a different person to get in a ring and just throw hands.
Yep.
So like, I think you learn so many different things by playing multiple sports, especially at a young age. Like, if I'm a high school baseball coach and I want to have tough players, right? Or I'm a college baseball coach and I want to have tough players, I'm going to go try to recruit football, like wrestling, like, athletic guys that are physical, that aren't afraid of the weight room, that aren't afraid to kind of get in there and get gritty and dirty. So I think early on, play everything. Like, try to play as many sports as possible. Introduce them to as many sports as possible. Because in the long run, it's going to help them be more versatile in anything else that they're going to do once they start to kind of specialize. I know, like, movement patterns, like to hit, there takes a certain type of movement pattern to hit and hit successfully. So finding guys that are agile, like basketball players that have good lateral movement, having football players that, have hip mobility and flexibility and things like that. I think those are all things that you can start to learn at an early age just by playing the sport. It's not specializing in it. It's not going to this specific trainer for football or baseball or basketball, It's just being introduced to it. Kind of going back to when we were growing up, like, hey, let's go to the park and let's go hoop.
Yeah.
Like, that was when I saw some crazy stuff on the basketball court growing up. Like, dang, this dude can really go.
Yeah.
Now sometimes it was a travel, sometimes we're playing some N1
no refs out
mixtape.
there.
There ain't no refs. Like, there ain't no fouls either. Like, we hooping.
That's okay.
Like, so like that's a different type of like going. So like even if you don't have the means, right, to be able to put your kid in this and this and this, take them to the park.
Yeah.
There's usually other people at the park like, hey, can we run with y'all? Like, can we play? Introduce them to that kind of thing. It's also going to help with their social emotional IQ, their EQ. It's going to help them be able to talk to other people and do things like that. So
absolutely. So let's jump into, lastly, like what are our recommendations? What would we tell athletes and parents? And, I kind of want to start there and just at the park. I think the more that we insert ourselves as parents, I think it's actually hurtful to our kids. Like I think about going to the park and, a foul not being called and having to like navigate that, right? I mean, and sometimes you kind of get into an argument with a buddy of yours or something. And then sometimes you're like, is this worth it or whatever? And then you just kind of have to play through it. At a youth event, when there's a foul, you're going to hear from parents, there's a foul,
long.
right? I mean, and at the park is like, you got to figure that out for yourself.
Yeah.
Now there's the whole safety issue because that's the same with me. I used to walk across town in the town I grew up in and go play. And, my mom didn't necessarily care and everything. And am I comfortable with my kids doing that? Probably not, so there's that side of it too that I understand. But, at the end of the day, I think, if kids were robots, then starting early and starting one thing would work. But there's the whole social, emotional, and motivation factor that you have to take into consideration. It's like, what is the purpose of this sport? Man, I want them to enjoy it. The more I'm pushing them to do it, I think less enjoyment that they have. And I've even had like, kids that I've known, whether I've grown up with them or they've been relatives that have been really good at sports. And they'll be like, I'm so burned out, but I don't want to say anything to my parents right now because I know they get a lot of joy out of me playing. And, I think as parents, we need to make sure that we tell our kids like, hey, if this ever happens, if you ever stop enjoying it, let me know and let's take some time off. I talked to Dale basketball has been really good over the last few years. And I talked to their head coach who just retired and he coached some of them growing up because his son was that age. And he said they were constantly like, hey, coach, put us in another tournament. Hey, look, we want to play in this league. And he was like, no, and we're going to take these next couple of weeks off. But they were always just chomping at the bit. And he made sure the motivation stayed high. And that's why they were able to have success. Some of them are playing college basketball now. He didn't burn them out by playing every single weekend whenever they were younger. Right. And every kid's different. So you have to find that balance. And even within your own family, every kid will be different. But my recommendations is, again, go back to why are we participating in the sport? Because the other benefit of sports is how do you handle when you strike out, right? When you miss a shot at the end of the game? How do you handle getting beat 30? How do you, you're learning so much. You're growing in so many ways here, right? How do you handle if you win a lot, and the pride and ego come in? As parents, are we navigating, hey, this isn't just about you and, okay, yeah, you won this game, but pride comes before the fall and you're setting yourself up to fall hard and you're putting your identity in this. And it's like athletics can be such a beautiful thing in an environment where both adversity and success is happening. But then how are we riding the wave with our kid? Right. Or are we standing firm into truth and being able to share that with our kids? And so making sure that you're kind of reminding yourself of why did we get involved in this sport? Is this still how we, is this the sport we still want to play? What other sports are we playing? Because the other thing is maybe my daughter is a good basketball player right now. But if she went to go play softball, she wouldn't be good right now. But that's beneficial for her because now she understands how to be a teammate in a sport where she's not one of the better ones, right? She may be on the bench more. And how do you support your teammates? Because that may be what they're doing for you in basketball. And so you're moving into different roles in each sport, and there's so much benefit there. But, I think what I would say is play sports young, right? but play multiple sports. And I would say probably not until your sophomore or junior year in high school do you really kind of figure out, okay, this is the 1 or 2 sports, or maybe even 3 sports that I want to be involved in. But I think through your freshman year, you need to play as much as you can. Yeah. I mean, even if you're not great at that sport. So what recommendations would you have?
I would say 1 team per season growing up, right? So, like, focus on 1 organized sport per season. So, if that's the fall, football, if speaking from a male perspective, football, right? Then in the winter, go play basketball. Then in the spring, go try soccer or baseball or whatever that may be, right? Then try to limit year-round play, right? Avoid specializing in 1 sport for more than 8-9 months of the year, right? Kind of segment that out. Now, when I say that, I'm not saying like, hey, if you want to play baseball, like it's okay for you to go and hit once a week or something like that, or go throw once a week, but don't go out and throw every day during off season or when you're not playing. Yeah, because at the data says like you're probably going to get injured at some point in time, right? I tell our guys this all the time. You only got so many throws in your arm. Then rest days. I think that's very vital. Yeah. Like even for little kids who have a ton of energy. Yeah. Like take a rest day. It's all right for them. Like, and this is probably the wrong thing. People are probably going to be like, oh my gosh, I don't want to play for this guy. But like at a young age, it's okay for them to miss a practice. To go to a birthday party. Yeah, right. Like
vacation, family vacation.
Like it is okay for that to happen because that is teaching them that, like, hey, everything is not all about the sport all the time. Yeah. Right? And I have a story in my head real quick of my youngest daughter, played in a soccer tournament not too long ago. They drummed this team early in the tournament in bracket play. They play them in the finals. They get beat. Like, some of the girls on that team were so devastated that they lost. Yeah. Right? And then I have my daughter who is like, she's great. She's great. She's just like, we lost. This is another game. Yeah. But then but I think at that age, it's good for them to learn how to navigate that. That's a teaching moment for a parent of like, hey, you guys just lost. That's all right. Like, you'll get to play them again. Like, it's not the end of the world. Guess what? You get to play them in indoor. Yeah. How about that? Right. So, like, there's so many different things that goes into that. And then seasonal breaks. Like, not just rest days, but seasonal breaks, too. Like, take a break from this season, right? Take a break from basketball season. Take a break from baseball season. And as you get older, then you start to hone on those type of things. And like I tell our guys now at high school, like if you're not hitting consistently, even our multi-sport guys, like they need to be playing catch a couple days a week right now. If our football team's still playing, it's December. Yeah. Like kudos to them. Right. You know absolutely. What I mean? That's awesome. Big time. But like our baseball players need to be playing catch, not during football time, but on their own. Yeah. Like play catch a couple days. Yeah. Just so when you come out, your arm is in shape a little bit. Right. But yeah, those are the recommendations that I have. And then just thinking about kind of wrapping this all up. Specialization is great once you get to a certain point, right? For each kid, we've already said it's going to look different, right? What I just want to relay to parents, and even I have to remind myself sometimes of this, is like, let's not do this early, right? Let's not specialize too early. Let's not have my 5th grade daughter in the gym 5 days a week. Yeah. She doesn't need to do that. Right. She doesn't need to. Yeah. It would help. Don't get me wrong. But for a little bit, she'll get burned out quick. Yeah, she'll get burned out, and I don't want her to do that. I want her to love playing basketball still, you know? So. Yeah. Absolutely. So this is such a big conversation. I'm sure we'll probably have to, talk about more things. We're going to have some guests on to dive deeper into each sport. Share your thoughts, parents, Please. What are questions and thoughts that you have? You can comment down below. Please like and subscribe. Thank you for joining us and can't wait to see you on the next podcast. Thanks.